The country talks about every day when you're at lunch or you're in any meetings, the first topic that comes up is always the economy. And you really get tired of going back to this one thing. But if you look at it, that's the root of most of our problem is our economy. And you try to dissect what is really wrong with our economy. Well, one thing is obviously we spend too much money, we give too much money away. But the other thing, if you look back at what's happened to the amount of people working, this country has got a lot of jobs that are not filled. And that's a big void. So we started trying to do some research to figure out what happened to all the people. Well, COVID, a lot of people retired, and unfortunately some people got sick, they can't go back to work, and then the ultimate happened, some of them didn't make it. And it hasn't just been COVID. We've looked back now for the past 20 years. And the good working force that we've had in this country, the ideal age from 16 to 64, that has stayed steady. But the amount of people working at that age has fallen. So we went back to try to find out why. And there's a lot of reasons why. And I was shocked at some of the reasons. One of the big reasons is a lot of the Americans are not as healthy as they should be. There's a lot of things eating on their health and slowing people down. The other thing too is a lot of people are taking care of elderly people or people that are sick. People that are 52, 53 years old and they fell on some bad sickness. Well, then the wife has to stay home to help take care of her husband. So that's two people out of the workforce now that was working. So every year we get to where we're more and more dependent on foreign countries and people to make our products. And when that happens, then that hurts your economy in many, many ways. The man working here today and takes his check home turns over 7 times in the local economy. When you buy something that was manufactured foreign country, that doesn't turn over any in this country. It's just the person that sold it and the person that bought it and maybe somebody that handled it. But the real jobs is when you make those things. And we've seen those jobs dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. We've gotten in this fix here, not overnight financially. And that's our number one problem in the United States today is our financial situation. You can put it on crime, you can put it on health, you can put it on jobs. When you get right down to it and look at your household, if you don't have X amount of dollars coming in, then you're going to have to cut something out. Now, if you continue to spend like you had the same amount of money coming in, or you even exceed that, then it's going to come to a point where there's a breaking point. And what does that mean? It means they're going to cut your credit cards off, or people's going to come repossess things or so forth. But that's how real life is. Now, that's not how it is in Congress. That's not how it is in administration. They can spend whatever. They brag a lot, from year to year that, hey, we took in $4.6 trillion, but they spent $6.8. They brag the next year, we took in more money. We took in $5 trillion. Well, let me just stop right there. Where did you get that? Well, you didn't get that from foreign countries. So that means you had to get more from the same amount of people that you got from last year. That's not a bragging point. That's just a fact. Okay, so now we take in $5 trillion this past year. What'd you do with that money? You spent that plus $1.5 trillion more. So it really doesn't matter when you look at the government how much revenue they get. They always spend more than they get. No other company, no other family, no other business in this country, or maybe matter of fact the world, could operate like the U.S. government. It doesn't matter what you spend. And if we're short, we're just going to borrow it. We're going to put that debt further and further and further down the road. Speaking of debt, 1992, this country had a $4 trillion debt. Nobody was happy with that. Even the people that was running for office at that time brought that up. That was a huge topic. The gentleman that won the presidency was a man by the name of Bill Clinton. And he'd done a great job 4 of his 8 years as far as when you look at the debt. But he had Newt Gingrich and a great Congress to work with him. But you got to give Clinton a lot of praise right there. He reached not across the aisle. He embraced Congress. And they did what they had to do to balance the budget. So they did that 4 of his 8 years. Now that's it. We haven't done it since. And we hadn't done it before that many times. The last 50 years, you balanced your budget 4 times. Now don't mean you paid anything down, but what you did do, you quit spending more than you took in. Well, we got away from that. Congress and administration is kind of like a football game. And whoever's got the ball, we'll say that's the president this year. It's Democrats. So they're on offense. So the other side is the Republicans. They're on defense. So at all costs, you stop that administration from getting anything done, whether it's good or not for American people. And that's what's sad. It's just who brought it up. The other side's going to go against it. Then about 3 or 4 years down the road, the other side wins. And now you're on offense as the Republicans and the Democrats are on defense. So the same thing. They're going to shut you down at any cost. Not going to let you get anything done. And the only time you ever get anything done the way the current system runs today is somebody fumbles the ball and you happen to get a score that you wasn't supposed to get. It's very rare. It doesn't happen very often. But it happened a lot when Bill Clinton was there. We had reasonable people looking at the situation and doing exactly what they needed to do. Did they please all Americans? Nobody ever does. But the debt didn't grow. You think about it, he was there 8 years, 4 years the debt didn't grow. Ever since then, it's grown every year. And now it's to the point now that it's around $32 trillion. So you go from $4 trillion in 1992, 31 years later, you're 8 times the debt that this country had. Now, what's the answer to that? Well, lots of things, obviously, but the number one thing that I look at is bad management. That's all you can lay it on. If you have X amount of money and you want to spend more, you spend on what you have to spend it on. There's some things that you know the man and the woman that's running this household, we'll say right down the road here and got 4 kids, and they got X amount of money coming in. There's probably a lot more they want to do. Maybe a lot of places they want to go that they're not going to go. But they're smart enough and reasonable people enough to know that they're not going to put themselves 8 times underwater in debt. They know they have to turn something loose, don't do everything on their wish list. But for Congress, it really doesn't make any difference. Whatever they want, somehow they get it pushed through because they want a $10 billion project, and the only way they can get it through is they have to give away $40 trillion to get the votes to get that to happen. And that's happened over and over and over and over. And for some reason, our administration keeps layering on more debt just to get a small something accomplished. And that's not right. They're trying to buy the votes like we know they do in elections almost every term. But something's got to stop this cycle. And the only thing you can do to stop this cycle is to hopefully elect an administration that has nothing on his or her mind but doing what's right for America. And I didn't say do what's popular for America. I said do what's right for America. It's like taking medicine. Sometimes you have to take a little bit you don't want to, but you do, and that's the way you get to feel better at the end. Do what's right for 4 years. Whether your side likes it or the other side don't like it, whatever. Just do what's right, whether you have all of Congress's support or not. But you stand firm on what you believe is right for this country, and you research it, and don't just do it because it's your dream like the current administration has. Do what's right for this country, and in 4 years, they'll probably put you back in. And that's why we switch every 4 years for another administration, because nobody's happy with the one they got. You know, we jumped out of one 8-year administration into a new administration, and we thought everything was going to be a lot brighter. And some things were. When it got right down to the end, the United States was puzzled again. The voters didn't know which way to go. You had a toss-up. You had 40 on one side, 40 on the other, 20 you had to convince in the middle. You go all the way back to Reagan and people like that to see when they really won a lot of support from both sides. That's because he just wanted to do what was right for America. Everybody has their flaws and everybody has their problems. But when we look at where this country is today financially and know that your debt is where it is now, when you look at $32 trillion, the interest that we're paying a year on that is over $800 billion. In the next 2.5 years, we'll be paying $1 trillion a year on your debt. That'd be your interest. $1 trillion. 1992, your whole debt was $4 trillion. Now your interest is going to be $1 trillion a year. How are we going to get out from under this? Quit giving money away that we don't need to give away. Quit wasting money that we do every day. Stop the fraud that the government has, and they admit over the last 10 years or 18 years that they've had now some $2 trillion in fraud that they can't account for. $2 trillion. That's half of what the debt was in 1992. So in the last 18 years, the government's gotten beat out in government contracts or Medicare fraud or whatever the fraud it is. The government says the fraud is about $2 trillion for 18 or 20 years. Is that just incompetence? Is that I don't care? You know, what's going on? Or is it, well, don't worry about it, we'll borrow more money? Well, borrowing more money is not the answer for any successful business. It's operating within the budget. And evidently, our budgets are just a number that's out there. We never adhere to it, except those 4 years that I talked about when President Clinton was there. So we've got to get back to the basics in this country. The next thing we need to do is we have got to get more people back to work in this country. That is the number one cash cow this country has. People working, not tax people more, the ones that are working, but you got to have more people working. Look at the railroad. They'll have a 40-car train, they got one engine pulling it. They're doing fine. Next train that got 85 cars, got 2 engines pulling it. Next train's got 140 cars, they got 3 engines pulling it. Everybody knows if the load gets heavier, you need more power to pull it. And our load right now is just about to break the back of this country. And we have got to get more people working inside our U.S. border. You got millions, tens of millions of people working for the United States today, but they're working in China and Japan and other countries. They're working for you, making things that you're buying every day that you need. So we don't need to hunt a market. We are the market. Probably the thing that would solve a lot of our labor problems overnight is look at your people that are on Social Security. That's always been a hot button since it started out. You're on Social Security, you're 62 years old, the man, the woman, and you say, let's retire. We need to travel a little bit. So you do, and you take the very minimum amount of Social Security, you lock it in on that 62. So maybe you're getting $30,000 a year. Played all the golf you want to play, and you fished a little bit, and you and Mama have rode around in a mini Winnebago for about 6 months, and you're tired of that. So you come back, and every week or two you get a call from your employer where you'd worked for 35 years. And he said, golly, Scott, can you come back to work? He said, I really need you. He said, I don't know, I've been thinking about it. And you look back, and you sit down, and you think about it, and you say, you know what? I would go back to work. I can make 125 or 100,000 or 150,000, whatever the number was. But when you do, and you look at what Social Security says, well, if you do, we're going to penalize you and take your Social Security away. Now, a lot of people talk about Medicare and other things going away to scare people. But when I'm talking about taking your Social Security away, I'm talking about taking the benefits that you've already locked in at 62. And for every $3 you make, they take $1 back, or depending on the different ratio. So if you make $120,000, they take your whole $30,000 or $35,000 back. So that discourages good American people who have been here all their life, worked 35 or 40 years, paid all their taxes in, done everything right, and now they want to go back to work because they can. We have a shortage of people. The companies around here are asking for people, begging for people to come to work. We've got millions, about 5 million people right now, what we calculate, could go back to work in the workforce tomorrow. And if they did, then they'd take that money, along with the $35,000, if you let the government let them keep getting that, take that other 100 or 125 they make. Now they got a lot of disposable income that they want to help their children and their grandchildren, and maybe possibly the community, the church, whatever they want to put some of that money toward. But we're penalizing those people and saying, if you go back to work, you can, but if you do, we're going to take your retirement away. Well, if you've locked it in at 62, leave that person alone. Let them have that money. They earned it. And we've done a test here using Scott as the test. And we took, if he comes back to work, and in about 8 months, the government has already gotten in Social Security, they've already gotten in Medicare and Medicaid, and the amount that the company would match, they already exceed that $35,000. So the government breaks even. Scott now is paying his own Social Security. You just didn't take it away from him. This country has gotten to be greedy. Your money is supposed to be your money, but your money is their money. And their money you can't get back. And their money they get to waste, which was your money. They're taking your money, in a lot of cases doing the right things with it. Because when you look at when $5 trillion came in, where did it go? Well, it paid your Social Security for all the people that are on it. It paid for the Medicare. It paid for the Medicaid. It paid to run the post office. It paid to run your military. It paid to run, Congress and so forth. And now all those things we need. But there's a big block at the bottom of that graph that shows a lot of other spending overseas, a lot of giveaways, a lot of programs. And then you look at how do we get people to go to work in this country? Tax incentives put people to work. We've had good presidents over the years that put tax incentives out there to get people to go to work. People say, what is a tax incentive, Joe? Does that mean the government's going to give me money? No, it's an incentive. If you go out here and you start a company, or you add to your company, you add to the workforce, and you get that company up and going, and you say, I want to double my workforce. There used to be a plan that the government had called industrial revenue bond lending. If you added employees to your company and you added manufacturing, built a shop or so forth, the government then made your loan a tax-free loan to the bank. The bank could loan you $1 million or whatever that loan was. You had to qualify. And you get that loan, and now you don't have, that bank does not have to pay taxes on that loan. Government didn't loan you the money. They didn't give you the grants like they're giving people today to start these wind farms and solar panel projects. They're giving that money away. The difference in an incentive is you give people the incentive to do something, then they get the break. You don't give it first. So you could take a company that has 11 or 12 people, they double the size of their company to 24, 25 people, they put a couple of shops in, buy some machinery, and go into the manufacturing. They get their own loan. The bank loans that company $1 million. They collect the interest on it. They don't pay any taxes on the interest. The government doesn't get anything there. But the 14 or 15 people on the income tax and the Medicare and the Social Security and the company matching it exceeds what the taxes would have been on the loan anyway. You know, this is not rocket science. This is simple, what I used to call arithmetic. That's all this country really needs to focus on, is the real things, the real numbers. You know, sure, we need our national security. That's a big portion of the $6 trillion that we spent. But we're drilling down right now to try to find out how much money that the military spent guarding foreign oil fields. So if you were drilling here in this country, instead of producing 11.5 to 12 million barrels a day, and you were producing the 20 million barrels that you're using, you wouldn't really have to be guarding the foreign oil fields around the world. You'd be doing that here. So, you know, bad policy ends up costing you money in numerous ways. One, we got 8 million barrels a day that we're needing here and using here every day and consuming here every day that we're not drilling for, not producing here. We're having to buy that. Tremendous loss to the economy right there. We have the refinery capacity to refine 20 million barrels a day. We just don't have the drilling capacity to do that. So we've got that subbed out, and we got that subbed out to some horrible countries. People that out of 165 countries on the bad list for how they treat their families and their people and their women and children, our president went to see number 164 with his hat in his hand to ask for oil and fist bumping like they were good buddies. You know, that right there is embarrassing to me and to the American people. When you've got a resource here that we've been producing for over 120 years, and you got reservoirs here that are actually unlimited, unmeasurable, and we go halfway around the world and do business with people that are mean to their women and children. But yet we want to sit back here and talk about the rights we have in this country and some rights that's been abused over the years and keep bringing that up and keep making that an issue in every election, when in fact we're doing business with people around the world that do horrible things 10 times worse than what this country has ever endured. Now, those are the things that I look at, and I have our research team dig down in and look at and say, just what is wrong with where we are today? Well, for me, Joe from Texas, one thing that would help this country, if they said, Joe, what would you like to see happen in this country first thing to help it get on the right path? I'd like to see prayer back in school. Why did we ever take prayer out of school? You know, if you don't want prayer in school and you're against that, that's your business, right? Why don't you empty your pockets and get rid of all your money? Because it says in God we trust on the back of it. You go all the way back to the Constitution, and you look at all of the people over the years that's been great, great people for this country. And you even look at the State of the Union. And most of the time, if not every time, the president who's standing there will say, God bless you and God bless the United States of America. Well, if it's okay to say it there, that's the number one person in the world for is authority and influence. And he says it every time. And whenever you get the First Lady President, she's probably going to say it too. But we take it out of our school. And that's where our children are. You know, I look at children today because I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But you know, you look at it and you look at them in school and you let them out. You drive by schools today and you see the playgrounds. You see all these little kids out there. They need to have a safe school. They need to have a school that the learning atmosphere is what it should be and like it used to be. I'd love to see the day that the woke agenda was gone from the schools. If you want your children to hear that or study that, get it done somewhere else. But why do we have to do that in the public schools? You know, you look at most of the kids are going to have to go to public school. You got a lot of kids going to charter school, a lot of kids going to private school, and mom and dad can afford that, so we send them there, and maybe we don't have as much of that being taught to them there. But how unfair is that for the majority of the children in this country? And the majority of the parents and grandparents in this country to know that that's what's in school today. Everybody talks about, and I've heard over the years, many generations have told me, that they said, Joe, always try to leave things better than you found it. I always thought about that, and that means a lot to me today. But I cannot leave this world better than I found it in 1950. What a great place. We just came out of the war victorious. The baby booming was starting. People were so proud and so happy. Manufacturing was going at a record pace. Everybody really felt good. You didn't lock your doors. I mean, it was just a great time. Nobody had a lot, but it didn't matter. You didn't have air conditioning, you didn't have all the cell phones or all the things you have today, but you had a heck of a lot of happiness. I think people felt more secure in those days. So I know I can't leave it better than I found it. But I can tell you that I know every day I strive to leave tomorrow better than I found yesterday. And we work hard at that at this company. And I work hard at that with our family and our children, our grandchildren, and the organizations that this company helps support. We join with people and work with them to make something better in the community. And it's a group effort. And that's what Congress needs to get back to, is that group effort. Just do what's good for America and get the chip off your shoulder. And every time a new administration comes in office and they got some good policies going, and it was a Democratic administration and now it's a Republican, don't change the good policies. If they're working for America, leave them alone. Just try to expand on it and bring your own good policies. What you need to do is work for the American people, because the American people don't work for you. American people don't work for Congress, and they don't work for the president. The president and Congress and all administration work for the American people. You are in charge if you take charge. You got the power to vote, and you need to vote. We got all these complaints right now about, have to do all this mail-in balloting because, people can't get to the polls. There's too much sickness, there's too much crime, there's too much excuses is what it is. What we need to do is, hey, let's look at it. What are we going to do? Let's expand early voting. Maybe it in 2 weeks. Make it 4 weeks. So the elderly people and the people that can't get there on election day, give them more time to get there. What are we hiding from them? Never have early voting start until you've had your first debate. Let the American people see and hear the people that they're going to vote on. Don't pull that kind of stuff on us again. Let us look so we can make our mind up before any of us cast that first vote. Everybody should have an ID to go vote. Why not? You have it for everything else. You can't even rent a car. You can't board an airplane. You can't go in a public building on some of them unless you go through a metal detector and all that. But we're going to vote, mass ballot voting. Let's get back to how it used to be. Used to in the 60s when I first started paying attention, I think the first president that I really paid attention to that got elected was John Kennedy. It's amazing to me how quick you found out who was your next president. And now, with all the electronic gadgets we got and all this media and everything, we think, man, we ought to know, 5 minutes after the polls close. But we don't. Now, do you ever ask yourself why you don't? What happened to knowing about it right now? What are they hiding? What are they doing? Get with your senators and your congressmen. Ask them. If you're going to vote for them, hold them accountable for what they told you they were going to do. Don't let them off the hook, because in 2 years or whatever the time is, vote them out. If they're not going to do what they told you they were going to do, or at least be trying to do it, or give you a good explanation, get rid of that person. That's what you do. When something goes bad and ain't working, you get rid of it. That's what you have to do. Unfortunately, this country has gotten to the point to where we just say, well, they're doing the best they can. There's nothing we can do. And we start to accept what's handed to us. Sometimes our politicians and Congress and administrations kind of like a bunch of bad cooks. It doesn't matter how good the ingredients that you give them. And I'll compare that to money. It doesn't matter how much money that they take in. They're going to spend more than they took in, and then have to go borrow some and make our debt worse. And that's what happens with a bad cook. It doesn't matter about how good the ingredients are. You take the best ingredients, and when you get through, people can't stomach what you just fixed. And there's a whole lot of things that come out of Congress today that I can't stomach. And there has been for several administrations. But nobody seems like they want to stand up and be the one that say, hey, you know what? The American people deserve a whole lot better than what you're giving us. You take a real good cook and take the lowest cut of meat and just a small amount of ingredients, and he or she can make a good stew or a good soup and feed a lot of people. I wish Congress had to eat a whole lot more of what they're shoveling and maybe they'd start making it better for all of us. You know, they stand up there and talk about how good things are and how great things are. They didn't have anything to do with it. This country was great before any of those people were born. But if you look at when you see your national debt at where it's headed right now, 8 times what it was in just a few decades ago, and they're going to stand there and tell you the State of the Union is strong, I don't know what that means. You know, when they ask me, is your company doing good? How strong? I say, well, I got some good buildings, got some good equipment. Is that what they mean about strong? Or they really mean, what is your financial situation? And I think the State of the Union is that. What is our financial situation? Well, it's horrible. It's ridiculous. We borrow so much money and pay so much out. And when you look at $200 billion of interest being paid to foreign countries a year for your national debt, $7 trillion is borrowed from foreign countries. Now that's ridiculous. Look at this economy we have. I mean, just look around us and see how much money we spend every day and how much we use every day. And we've got to borrow money from Japan and other countries? Doesn't make any sense. We're the laughing stock of the world. And now we're going to cut off our drilling so we can be more in debt to some other foreign country. I spent a lot of time, obviously, and you're hearing an old man ramble today, but I spent a whole lot of time just looking and saying, what is wrong with this country? There's nothing wrong with the American people. The American people are just as solid as they were many, many, many generations ago. Our leadership has got to where they have to argue and bicker with the other side. And they end up not getting anything done. I've talked about that before in your house. If you and your spouse argue all the time and the kids see that, well then all of a sudden, you know, that's the atmosphere. And that's the atmosphere right now. When you watch a politician on TV now, you know, how much of that is true? I'd say a little bit. I know they introduce them. I'm pretty sure their name's right. But other than that, I can't put a whole lot of stock in the rest of what they say. I'm not saying everything's bad. Obviously, it's not. But I can tell you, if you don't get a hold of your finances as a family, as a business, as a community, as a state, as a nation, you're headed for some times that we'll never get back out of. I don't want another country to own what we own. This is our country. That's the reason we had people go to war. And that's the reason people have endured the hardships they've had for many, many generations. For you and I to have this country that we have. And we are supposed to leave it at least as good as we found it. At least as good. And if you can do anything better, you should strive to do better. Hopefully some of the things I've said today will make some sense to you. And if some of it makes you mad, well, hey, at least I got your attention. Maybe go vote another way or something. This is the best country in the world.